Hey guys, it's Jim Dewey with Combating the Narrative. So I've been looking around on YouTube for some of the worst offenders of, those in the historical community who are intentionally misrepresenting history to fit into their own niche political ideology. And I found this guy who goes by the name of the Cynical Historian, and it would seem I'm something of a foil of his. He claims to do the exact same thing I'm doing, except he's actually backed by the establishment and pushing the narrative. Now, I'm not usually one to go for, like ad hominem attacks, but this dude looks exactly like a mashup of that Chud meme and a meme I saw like 5 years ago circulating the internet. And it brought me such joy that I just wanted to share it with you guys real quick before I sort of get into the meat of here, take a look. Like, guy, come on. I'm not trying to bully you, but we need to work on this just a little bit, all right? The shaved head thing doesn't go so well with your political ideology. Maybe lose the glasses, lose a couple of pounds, and you'll look a little better. Again, not meaning to like bully this guy. This isn't the main content of my video today, but I just wanted to share that with you guys. YouTube, please no channel strike. So as I'm perusing this guy's channel, I stumble across a couple of shorts that really gave me insight into who this guy is and led me to dig a little deeper into his channel. And before I go into some of his other lengthier videos, I just want to give you a little breakdown and a little taste of, I think, one of the worst offending video shorts. Now, the YouTube short that I'm going to show you is entitled The Rise in U.S. Christian Nationalism. Now, the title alone made me wonder where and when is this guy living where he's seeing a rise in U.S. Christian nationalism. But I digress. Before I show you the video, I'm just going to throw up a little copyright fair use disclaimer here so the YouTube gods don't smite me off the face of the channel. Alright guys, sorry about that. I know it's annoying, but it's a yeet or be yeeted world out there, and I'm certainly not going to get yoted upon by the Cynical Historian and a copyright strike. So, without further ado, here we go.
There's been a disturbing rise of U.S. Christian nationalism over the past few decades.
Okay, citation needed. As evidenced by what? U.S. national pride, at least according to Gallup, is at record lows. Religious affiliation in the United States is at record lows. So where are we getting this idea that U.S. Christian nationalism is on the rise? Furthermore, I want you to explain to me exactly why this is disturbing to you. The U.S. has traditionally been a Christian nation, so what's there to be disturbed about, Mr. Cynical Historian? What, did a gang of kids from the local vacation Bible school beat you up when you were a kid? Sounds to me like you've got some own internal biases and prejudices you need to work through. It sounds to me like you just don't like Christians for your own personal reasons, therefore any rise in Christianity or Christian identity is bad.
They claim we were founded for the sake of so-called Judeo-Christian values, which is really just nonsense.
I know this isn't exactly the point he's making, but I do dislike the term Judeo-Christian values used by the Dennis Prager types on my side of the aisle. It's not such a useful term, and it kind of lumps Jews and Christians together as though they're not two totally separate and distinct religions with their own separate and distinct values and belief systems, especially if you're getting into the Talmud. There were very few Jews in the United States at the time of its founding, just as there are now, so to claim Judeo-Christian values is certainly misleading. That'd be like saying Islamo-Judeo-Christian values because they're all Abrahamic religions, even though there weren't many, if any, Muslims residing permanently in the United States at the time of the founding, being that citizenship was restricted to free white persons of good character. As far as the nation not being founded for Christian values, I mean that's not such an intelligent statement to make. That's like saying, well, people weren't made for the house. It's that's not how the world works. Houses are made for people to meet their needs and reflect them on a personal level. In the same way, the state is founded by and for, or at least this state was founded by and for the people to reflect their values and their needs. The people of the United States, up until very, very recently, were overwhelmingly Christian. They still are, but overwhelming to the point where it wasn't even worth mentioning that there were people of other religions here.
Like any other kind of nationalism in an already established nation-state, these chauvinists deny history to exclude people from that identity and curtail their rights.
So, any kind of nationalism, huh? Does that extend to BLM and black nationalism? Does that extend to organizations like La Raza and Hispanic nationalism? No, I sincerely doubt, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I sincerely doubt you have an issue with any of those. So tell me, why is it that those aren't dangerous nationalist identities, but U.S. Christian nationalism is a dangerous identity? It seems to me that there's a characteristic among most U.S. Christian nationalists that you're disdainful of, but you don't want to outright say it. And again, do you think that black or Hispanic nationalism are these great evils and that they're too exclusionary? No, I sincerely doubt that you do. And really, your take on this shows me you don't understand what nationalism is and what it means to nationalists like myself. And I've got no problem with black or Hispanic nationalists. Okay? Nationalism isn't necessarily this negative thing. Hey, everybody else who's not us is bad. It's a positive thing. It's, hey, I'm X identity, to use your example. I'm a U.S. Christian, and I think that's pretty cool. I like being an American Christian. It's not a bad thing to have a positive view of your own identity. And what precisely do you mean by denying history to exclude them? Look, I'm sorry that you don't like it, but fact of the matter is, up until like the 80s, the United States was 90-ish% white. So naturally, there aren't going to be too many people who are non-white that did a bunch of relevant things in history. No, you're the one that's denying the reality of history, that reality that I just talked about, to include people who weren't here, and if they weren't relevant, just because it makes you feel better, you can virtue signal, and it pushes your own political ideology.
It's the most extreme of the religious right, which arose in the 1970s.
It's honestly kind of funny to me that you think the religious right of today is somehow super extreme. Like, dude, a lot of the churches, at least I see on an anecdotal level, and I know a lot of the Protestant churches are this way now, like, they've got female pastors, they've got, like, gay pride flags, flapping in the breeze there. That's something that is not traditionally associated with the historical religious right. Like, you do realize that up until the 70s, the Mormons believed in capital punishment for race mixing. Like, you guys would lose your mind if somebody said that today. And, like, you want to talk about religious extremism or religious nationalism. Dude, I have stories from buddies who are in Iraq and Afghanistan talking about how, if they were seen eating during the day during Ramadan while they were in Iraq and Afghanistan, it was incredibly likely that they were going to get mortared or face some sort of, IED or ambush style attack. Like, that's what religious extremism is, not, this tepid, lukewarm response to just like egregious changes in societal norms. Like, oh, hey, well, that's not such a good thing. Like, no, religious extremists will kill you. They'll straight up kill you.
And xenophobic McCarthyism before that.
Number one, I really hate loaded political buzzwords like xenophobia. But it stops being an irrational phobia when there legitimately is an existential threat from without, which there was in the Soviet Union and China. Furthermore, McCarthy was 100% right. I will debate you on that point anytime, anywhere.
They ultimately deny religious freedom and exclude anyone who does not fit that white Anglo-Saxon Protestant or WASP identity politics.
Dude, you know as well as I do that whole Anglo-Saxon Protestant part hasn't been relevant for quite some time in this country. Like, I bet if you were to even talk to those Richard Spencer types, like way on the far right end of the spectrum, the admitted white nationalists, I sincerely doubt they would even care if you were German and Catholic. Like, it doesn't matter anymore.
Despite the fact that the founders were overwhelmingly secular regardless of their actual religious beliefs, which many were actually deists.
See, this statement right here is how I know you're just a midwit and you're nowhere near as intelligent as you think you are. Like, you realize that the word secular, definitionally, is having no religious or spiritual basis. Like, there's no two ways about that. It's black and white. Deism, I'll break it down for you. Deism, the belief that God's real, he's up there, he just doesn't interfere in human affairs. That's a non-secular belief. That is a religious belief. And I can't be arsed to go look up exactly how many of the founders, depending on your definition of who the founders were deists. I know it's a large number of them. It may even be a plurality. I would highly doubt that it's a majority. But, I mean, in the founding documents, literally in the Declaration of Independence, within the first, paragraph or two, they talk about nature and nature's God. Like, to claim that they intended this to be some sort of, free from religion, super secular society is idiotic. They just meant to not have religion interfere with government affairs in the same way that the Puritans who first came over here were flogging people and putting them in the stockade for not going to church and things like that. Now, let's grant for your sake that all the founders were super secular people, freedom from religion, all that good stuff. They weren't, but let's grant that for your sake. They also sought to create a nation, as Lincoln would later put it, of the people, by the people, and for the people. And again, it's undeniable that the founding stock of this nation were overwhelmingly religious and they were overwhelmingly Christian, Protestant Christians. And so that nation and the societal norms of that nation are reflected in that.
The founders included religious freedom in our Bill of Rights and ratified a treaty stating the government of the United States of America is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion.
I don't know that it's entirely useful to refer to the founders as a monolith. I understand you're not the only one that does it, and I'm guilty of it too, but they were a collection of very different people with very different beliefs who agreed and disagreed on any number of things. But you're correct. In the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, they put, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So they're recognizing the importance of religion and religious fervor in a healthy society. What they're saying here and what they're trying to ensure is that this does not become some sort of theocracy. They don't want a repeat of some of the first colonies here in the United States, or what would come to be known as the United States, where there were very severe punishments inflicted by what passed for the state in those little towns and colonies for minor religious infractions like not going to church or not being your particular brand of Puritan. This does not mean that they didn't view the United States as a Christian nation. And I don't know, man. It seems to me, by the amount of disdain you have for the Christian right and Christian nationalists, that you kind of feel like the free exercise thereof ought to be abridged in some way or another. I don't know how you go about doing that without use of the state. Again, I want to bring up the fact that the United States had codified into law restricted citizenship to free white persons of good character. White persons who overwhelmingly on the global stage were Christian. The founders clearly saw that some level of cultural homogeneity was not just good for the well-being of a nation, but necessary for the well-being of a nation. Now, to address that treaty which you briefly mentioned, and I do understand that it's a video short you're making, but I mean, to not describe it in any further detail is just not academically honest. So I'll go into detail for you. So what he showed on screen was the Treaty of Tripoli. And what this was an agreement to cease hostilities between the United States and the Barbary pirates. Now, these were pirates that had operated off of the Barbary coast for some time. It wasn't just the United States that was getting harassed. It predates the United States. The British Empire was getting hit hard too. And what would happen is these Barbary pirates would demand tremendous sums of money. Oftentimes, these sums were much larger than the shipping companies or governments could pay. And if you didn't pay up, your trade would be harassed, your cargo would be seized, and people would be either sold into slavery or ransomed. Yes, white people were, on a large scale, sold into slavery. And that system of slavery, the Barbary slave trade in the Ottoman Empire, was far worse than anything going on in the United States. But that's a video for another time. Now, a big concern of the Arab, Muslim, Barbary pirates was that because the United States was a nation populated by Christians, that they were somehow perpetually at enmity with those who adhered to Islam. You know, these Christian white people, there've been like 15 crusades at this point, depending on how you count them. You know, how do we know that you won't later engage in hostilities with us? Well, to assuage some of those fears, it was emphasized to the Barbary pirates that the primary concern of the United States government was not the advancement of Christendom. They weren't a theocracy. The primary concern of the United States government was protecting its people who happened to be Christians in a Christian nation. And it's not as though this was universally accepted as like the correct stance for the United States government to be taking. I mean, I know that you got the majority of your information on this subject from the Wikipedia page. That much is obvious. So you know good and well that the Secretary of War at the time, James McHenry, was irate and opposed that language, saying that he felt that it was like the United States government was trampling on the cross. And I'm sure he wasn't the only one with that sentiment. What you're trying to do here is just retcon history to back up your own personal political ideology and political agenda that you would like to push because you don't like the way history actually happened. Now, I've only briefly cruised over some of your other videos, so admittedly, I don't have a solid grasp on exactly what it is you believe, but I just get the sense that you selectively care about the founders when it suits your needs. You'll be like, oh, the founders wanted you to, have a society free from those evil, evil Christians. But then in the next breath, you'll say something to the effect of, well, the founders never could have predicted that there would be AR-15s in existence. And even if they did, who cares? They were all old white men who owned slaves. Therefore, their opinion is worthless anyway, and we should just do away with the whole system they set up because it's evil and racist.
Ultimately, Christian nationalism is a more polite form of white supremacy.
When I talk about blood libel, this is precisely what I mean. So this guy's got a picture of a flaming cross and guys in KKK outfits and associating that with Christian nationalism in the United States. I mean, that's ridiculous. You are aware that a lot of Christians, especially with the demographic shift in the United States, are not white, right? Like, you realize the Latino community is almost exclusively Christian. You realize that a big portion of the black community is very, very Christian. Like, I don't understand what you're getting at here. Or rather, I do understand what you're doing here. See, the issue with Christian nationalists, as you call them, isn't that they're Christian. No, it's something else. It's that they're white and Christian because overwhelmingly they're likely opposed to the type of political actions you would like to take. They're what's standing in your way. And so, how do you justify doing the things you want to do to them in order to get your own way politically? Well, let's draw a connection between them and racially motivated violence. If you're a Christian nationalist, likely right wing, I mean, look at, you're associated with these guys running around in bed sheets burning crosses. Like, it's ridiculous, man. Okay, cynical historian. You've brought up the issue of U.S. Christian nationalism. Tell me, what's your final solution to the Christian problem? Okay, long and short of this video is this guy clearly does not know what he's talking about, or have a solid understanding of history. And if he does, then he's just being deliberately disingenuous with it. I chose this as a little starter project because it was only a minute long, and it's taken me like 20 minutes at this point to respond to him. So I'm going to get a gold mine of content off of this guy's channel. I would love to have some sort of like, back and forth with video responses or engage him in a live debate format. I feel that would be extremely valuable to, his viewers and the people at large. I'm trying not to be too citation heavy. If you guys would prefer I change that, I will. Everything I have said is historically sound. If you guys have anything about this video that you liked, disliked, I'm open to criticism and suggestions. As always, feel free to hit me up with questions, comments, arguments, death threats, hate mail, whatever you got, I'll take it. Till next time.